Jody, have your copy, right? You have your copy as well?
I grabbed some, yeah. You know what? That might be better.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry? Oh. You need this? And this? Okay. I hereby call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order, this being Tuesday, April 10th at 6:37. With me, I have Counselor Juana Anderson Burgos. I'm Counselor Linda Bacon, and sitting in to make our quorum is our esteemed Counselor Joe McGivern. So we have our committee meeting open, and I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the previous meeting minutes from February 27th and March 27th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was here so I can accept them, right?
Yes, thank you. So 227 and 327 are accepted. Okay, so under item 2, I would accept a motion to take up item 2 and to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So before us, we have item 2 filed by Counselor McGee. Ordered that section 6.4.7 of zoning be sent back to ordinance to be amended in order to be in conformity with the rest of the sign ordinances under the zoning code. So after we had passed a very limited ordinance relative to signage in our city, it was determined by our building commissioner that given some conflicts within the technical portions of the ordinance around the size, width, depth, and whether signs were two-sided and such, that the ordinance needed to be cleaned up to fit in with the current ordinances on the books. So in proper order, we have advertised and reopened, which we've done this on a couple other matters as well. And so we are in public hearing at this time, so the applicant can come before us. I have been made aware that there is a change being requested from the draft that I have, that is the cleaned up draft. So if the applicant is seeking at this point in the public hearing any other changes or clarifications, please make that known. I am looking at a copy that was given to me today, which is the most recent updated. It's a 3-page copy. And just by way of housekeeping, the planning board chose to hold their hearing separately. They began at 5:30. I have requested that staff following their activity at the planning board come to this meeting to inform us of the actions of the planning board. So from the applicant, if we could hear any feedback on this draft to clean things up.
I spoke, the issue is on number 9 of under 2. I spoke, the issue is that the sign that we proposed is 37.7 instead of 32 square feet. I've had several conversations with Amy Cody in the last few days, and he basically, I didn't know if he was going to arrive. He may be coming, I don't know that. He said he might come. I spoke to him this morning. He said he was going to try to come here or a letter, but he had no opinion on as long as it was under 40 square feet was his major decision, his major thing. He had no problem at 38.
What was the original size that you had come in with? Was it the 32?
I thought we had, yes, 32 was put on there by planning and by, we didn't ask for 32.
No, planning was put on there by planning.
Right, for 32. The sign that we put on, we applied for and everything has always been the 7.7.
So that hasn't changed from the initial? Okay. Okay. And so everything else that is documented on here is as discussed. Can somebody make a motion to suspend rules just so we can have Crystal weigh in?
Second, yeah. Motion to suspend rules to allow the city solicitor to weigh in. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, Crystal, I know this has gone back and forth a lot with all the technicalities, but at this point, with the printed copy that we have before us, is everything to the best of your knowledge in compliance with coming into conformity with the current sign ordinances? That was our sticking point?
Correct. This has actually been looked over by several people, building department, planning department, to kind of make sure that it is in conformity. So rather than doing a separate section on non-accessory signs, we chose to implement in various sections of the sign ordinance to make it so that a non-accessory sign would be, or an off-premises sign, rather, would be available. So if you read through the draft language you have, we're actually deleting the 647 in its entirety, which I think alleviates, and I didn't catch this earlier, it actually alleviates the 32 square feet issue.
It does.
Because that entire part is being deleted, and then we delete the definition of off-premises signs and add a substitute to that definition right under there. We've also defined billboard, even though they're not allowed, we actually give it a definition. Still only allowed in IG zones, as was prior discussed. We would like it permitted on a parcel or abutting lot which has a legally occupied structure. It would avoid not having anyone to go to, say a sign is deteriorating. If it's a vacant lot that somebody's thrown it on and there's no real owner to look to do something with that sign, that will hopefully avoid any issue there. That was a request of various departments. The 20 feet above surrounding natural grade, it's just the language that's used in a lot of our other ordinances. It gives a better grasp of what they're looking at rather than surrounding concrete, because, you know, it may not be concrete, it may be asphalt, it's too arbitrary. And then we substitute in a new definition for electronic signs that really doesn't change a whole lot. It just kind of cleans it up. So there's just a couple of minor changes, and we basically are adding in this section 6468, which is now off-premises signs. That just gives a couple of, I believe 5 points that need to be followed for these specific off-premises signs.
Okay, so just as a point of clarification for me, I understand that on the first page, under the definitions and 1 through 13, that those are gone.
Correct.
However, the reference point was 40 square feet. That was then considered a billboard, and in the new language, it's 300 square feet, which
Right.
is
So,
quite a big difference.
trying to find the language you'd be looking for as to size. There should be a reference as to size, and I thought it referenced the chart.
Oh, within the zoning book?
Yeah, there's a,
Oh, okay.
6.468A, allowed in BA.
there it is. It's A, so allowed only in IG zones following the size limitations for signs in the business and industrial districts table. So there's a table in the current sign ordinance that it would have to follow. And it's based on square footage of a building, I believe, and various other factors. But that's where we also got the 300 square feet, because that's as high as our sign limitations go currently. So anything over
Okay.
that would not be allowed in the city already.
Okay.
So that was our guideline.
Okay, so if you'll bear with me, because I hadn't connected the dots at exactly this way. Given that reference, is there any concern around the 40 square feet issue or question?
As long as he's in,
It's in IG that we're looking at. So I just want to make sure, because if we're doing it to clean it up, I want to make sure we're not creating another problem.
So pursuant to the size limitations for signs in business and industrial districts, maximum surface area for each sign as of right in an IG district is 75 square feet. And then by special permit, it is up to 150 square feet.
Okay, so 40 would be okay
Correct.
as an off-premises sign.
Right, because it follows the IG
It's within that
size regulations.
original definition.
Correct.
And we've cleaned up by the reference, the issue about two-sided, one-sided, and all that.
Yes.
Because that was the other issue that I understood was a concern. And see, it's just a little hard when when you don't know all the ordinances, when they're referred to in the one we're working on, you know? It's like, it's pointing here and there and everywhere.
And there's nobody here from the planning board to talk to us.
I'm expecting,
waste your
Marcos
time.
Marrero to be here shortly. You did?
So sign is already defined in our ordinances. Huge ordinance, I'm trying to find where it distinguishes that it's single or double-sided, but it's already done in our ordinances.
Okay, so there would be no longer any conflict since it's referenced?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's just what I wanted to be sure of. I didn't want to end up with a but after we get through this. Okay. Counselor McGivern.
I could, through the chair, to our state solicitor. Crystal, on the electronic language, as you know, I objected to doing this way. I thought we should be handing the accessory off-property signs separately, and the permission to do electronic and digital will be part of the special permit process. Am I reading this correct, that the existing language for digital signs, for all digital signs, has now been changed?
I thought it wasn't changed. I thought it was not
Yep,
changed.
so it would change under special regulations in our sign ordinance. So it's listed as 643 and then number 6. And the current language is given to you that we're deleting that, and then,
The current language, I believe, is no electronic signs, no digital signs, period.
so the current language is where I've put under deleting, that's the current language in our sign ordinance.
No sign or advertising device shown any direct incorporate way be lighted, flashing, scrolling, blinking lights, or be designed to attract attention to change by light intensity or direction, mechanical fixed banners, and so on.
Correct.
None.
So that's
And the
exactly,
planning board changed this without coming to us.
So what is this adding in its place? What does it do? Because I just want the committee to understand that my request was that this would only be changing to fix the intention, which was the off-premises sign conflict.
right, but I believe that the sign they're intending on doing has some sort of digital aspect to
It does. And in the special permit process, on item 13, which is now deleted, it was a very simple process because of the location of these signs. In this particular case, what Mr. Rome has proposed, item 13 was, the use of digital signs is permitted under the discretion of the city council. And now we're proposing to eliminate that. It should be by special permit only.
I don't know that it was by special permit to begin with.
It was proposed to be by special
Well,
permit.
we passed this ordinance. As much as those who don't like it, it is a current ordinance, and it does say, number 13, unless we, in this public hearing process, change it and recommend otherwise,
Understood.
right? Okay.
So the current ordinance is for non-accessory signs only. The language we're changing is for signs in general.
It's written here, you're deleting section 6-4, 3, number 6.
Right, and we've changed it in a small way, which,
You deleted it.
right, but we added it back.
Place the second paragraph, which is keeping a lot of this.
Crystal is explaining things.
So the ordinance that originally came to you that we're trying to fix, that number 13, is for non-accessory signs only.
Correct.
Correct.
Which is what began this whole process,
Right, so
and where it should have stayed. but
We're
I'm sorry.
looking at all of the sign ordinance.
Correct, and that's my question, is the planning board is proposing that you now can have anywhere digital signs allowed with the following exceptions. Image, text message, area may only change once every 24 hours. That's a major change in the city council ordinance itself.
No, because the original language in our sign ordinance says fixed banners or electronic signs using changeable lights to convey time, temperature shall be exempt from this prohibition. So our current language is allowing a form of digital sign.
Our current language is no electronic signs.
That's not what it says in this
The
language
way we
here.
wrote it, that's the way we voted on it.
Remember, we always had this discussion about the high school having scrolling back,
And we always said it was illegal in the two churches.
but that's not what the ordinance said. We did visit this once before.
So within our current ordinance, there has been the exemption and there was the gas station example that we had in the past, where they were able to have the changeable lights because they displayed the temperature and the time.
Right.
And so in our prior public hearings, it was discussed that with this off-premises sign, the person or company that was gonna have the sign was gonna put up the time and temperature so that they could have the changeable lights. That's my recollection of the discussion in the prior public hearings. We did not have any discussion about changing the ordinance on the electronic signs, deleting anything or adding anything. This is new language that is changing the sign ordinance that we did not entertain, to my recollection, in the original hearing where we passed this ordinance. What we did is for the off-premises sign, we wrote in language that said that a digital sign could be permitted at the discretion of the city council because it's a special permit under the city council. That's what the committee intended, that's what the city council approved, and that's what our intention is to maintain. So, I think so noted, and Councilor McGivern, to your point, that would raise into question deleting the current 6.43, because if we're staying to that, we would keep it, and we would just not add the new language. Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Crystal, didn't you make the suggestion though to reword and maybe delete a few things to accommodate?
We
Was
just
that-
we didn't want it under the discretion because that would lead to issues where the discretion is left up in the air. We needed something more particular, and I mean, this is a draft, and this has been an ongoing draft for months.
Right.
So to
Right.
say where this small bit of language came from, I mean, we've already
knows?
allowed time and temperature, so I don't know if the image, text, or message not changing every 24 hours is something that was brought up in a prior hearing.
Well, that's what I recall, is somebody bringing it up, saying that maybe we should reword this to accommodate. I thought that's what I heard. I'm just trying to make sure.
Well,
I mean, this is only a draft. If you don't like it, we can
right,
change
and
it.
exactly, and that's what people are weighing in on their points of view in that regard.
I have to excuse myself, Madam Chairman, because Councilor Lisi is now here. But I will go over there and continue to speak if it's okay.
Absolutely. Under our new rule, because it is new, I believe the person making the quorum stays while the matter is under debate that they started on. So if you'd like to, you may stay. But if you want to go to your own desk, that's fine too. But we thank you.
It's going to come out the same way.
Yeah. So,
I'll stay.
okay, so would you like to be recognized on this?
Well,
Councilor McGivern?
if the hearing's going to continue, I do have two motions to make once the hearing is, are we going to, depending if we close the hearing or not.
Right. So does the applicant have any more information to bring to the committee around any of these matters that we've been discussing so far? The size, the digital, the electronic, et cetera?
Gary Rome, 150 Whiting Farms Road. Just that our intention with this sign is our intention is to have the time and the temperature there as a community service to make it available to people so they can see what time it is, if they're late for work or they're early for work, or to see what the temperature is out there. And it's also our intention to utilize the sign for the community in the event we want to promote growing Holyoke or any of the events, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Celebrate Holyoke, the Hispanic Festival, or anything, if there's an Amber Alert or anything like that. So that's our intention. Also to be a directional sign to direct people to our new
Which is
facility.
the main intention,
Which is the main
correct?
intention,
And,
yes.
and so, from my perception, you have not been seeking to have a flashing, scrolling, or blinking sign.
Correct.
And the ordinance that we passed was very narrow, and it did not anticipate expanding signage into blinking, scrolling, neon, whatever, to my recollection. To that point, Counselor McGivern. Is there anybody else here that wishes to be heard on the matter in the public hearing session?
I just have one question, if I may. At the end of this draft, it says that the ordinance shall take effect on the date of passage. So it's my understanding that the ordinance was already passed. So does that,
That's a good
so does
question.
that mean that the 20-day waiting period
Okay.
or whatever is already expired?
So that's a good question, and I would defer to Crystal on this. As a legal matter, we approved the special permit under the ordinance that we're now amending. So if we change the ordinance, do we have to begin anew to approve the special permit after the ordinance is amended?
Because now you have new regulations, so in order to meet the new regulations, you need a new special permit. I think the roadblock they ran into is that even though they have a special permit under the old ordinance, which is fine, that permit really doesn't work because there was no way to approve the sign under the old ordinance. So it's kind of a catch-22 in this situation. Generally, it's a timing issue, so at the time someone applies, it looks to what's in place in our ordinances at the time of application. But in this case, there was sort of that odd roadblock in the middle. So he would need to apply for a new special permit under the new regulations.
Does that mean another public hearing for a special permit and then waiting for the full city council to approve that?
It does.
What special,
Right now, we don't have a special permit
right now, there's no special permit.
Right now, we don't have the ordinance amended. Right now, we have the ordinance that the building commissioner will not issue a building permit under. So right now, there isn't the ability to apply for the special permit until we amend the ordinance. Or for when they,
Do we need a special permit if the ordinance is already approved? Do we, and the...
Yes.
The,
because that was the basis of the whole,
I think he's asking, our new ordinance wouldn't require a special permit assuming he's within size limitations, I think. So as long as he's within that table and doesn't meet that odd sign limitation, he would be within,
oh, so you're saying,
I think he just needs a building permit in compliance.
oh, okay, so
Because
then,
there's a size requirement as of right that he's allotted under the IG zone.
but that wasn't the intent of the ordinance, but Counselor Lisi?
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, it's really up in the air because we're trying to figure out what this committee and therefore the city council wants to do with the ordinance altogether. So there's some will on this body to have it via a special permit. From the planning department, it seems that they feel that it could be fairly straightforward if we just lay out the parameters by which these accessory signs could be permitted. So I think that we won't know whether or not a special permit is required until we wrap up the public hearing here and pass some version of an ordinance.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard under the information gathering portion here of the public hearing? The other issues we can debate once the hearing is closed, but if there's anything that you wish to have us consider.
Elaine Florio, 31 Wellesley Road, and I'm president of Holyoke Taxpayers Association. And I just have to say that I'm very discouraged being here and seeing all of this going on. I know that you are trying very diligently, all of you, to work to get this a slightly different change for business here in town, but I think it's gone on far too long.
I agree.
And I know that you're following the rules, following process. I think it's a huge statement to all of the Holyoke community that government has run amok here in Holyoke. If it takes this long for one business to get this type of a sign, and I hear counselors all across the community, I try to talk to everybody, say how business friendly, and I don't think anybody wants to hurt a business, and when I say this, but I think that all of this needs to be very carefully looked at and reviewed, because this is too long. This is damaging and hurtful to a business. And Gary's a great guy. He's here. He's got a major investment here in Holyoke, and he's not going to turn and run out of Holyoke. But this is the kind of imagery that goes out there that I get the phone calls about, and that I'm sure other members from Holyoke Taxpayers, and there's a number of us here this evening. This is the kind of thing that doesn't help Holyoke as a whole. And again, I have to say, I don't, the four of you individually, each one of you, I know nobody wants to do anything to hurt Gary Rome's business or not make this work, but even the thought of having to go for another hearing or anything, I don't know how you work it out, but I think there's got to be some way that it can be done, if it's a waiver or whatever. This just doesn't pass the smell test. And again, it's not individually with any of you, but I think it's important that a stand is made by our elected officials to redo the processes and the rules that get us into these tight situations. That's it, and I'm sorry to say it, but I wish you luck.
Thank you. And I will say for the record that I have spent the last month or two trying to collaborate and coordinate on this very hearing, which was part of the reason for the delay, so that it would be a joint meeting tonight. And I did everything within a reasonable person's power to make that happen. And the planning board chose to meet separately, and I asked personally, person to person, to Marcos Marrero yesterday that he come here after the hearing to this body, which we have made repeated requests for staff to be at this meeting if the planning board chooses to hold its hearings separately, and you see the result of that. And my goal is not to point fingers or place blame, but it did create delays in the attempt to accomplish that, which unfortunately did not end up in the desired result. And so here we are, and because there are processes that we can't change. One of them is that if we close the hearing tonight, which we will, because I don't foresee that there will be new information to inform our decision to be received, we still have to wait for the planning board to give us a recommendation. So
I may ask, I don't know if I can ask a question.
we don't control that aspect of the process. Yes.
I thought it was my understanding that all of this was done with planning, and everybody got together in some sort of meeting and meetings and went through this so that this could be done as we speak. The other question, the other issue I can tell you is, for my own, the other entity involved in this is the building department. I've had conversations on my way to court this morning with Damien Cody, who read through this, and this is fine, and as long as it's under the feet, 75, whatever, the 40 feet, he's happy, building permit, this is what he wanted to see. I thought he was gonna come tonight, but
Well, it's nice
forgot.
Damien's talking to, and it's nice everybody's talking
I
to
thought he
everybody
was
else,
gonna give a letter.
but nobody is talking to the city council.
I had asked him for a letter, and he had told me he was gonna try to
That's
make the
wrong.
meeting. I don't know if he could or
I'm
couldn't.
sorry?
Original order.
In the spirit of your comment, that was my general understanding as well. And so I'm actually taken aback that nobody did come here from planning, and I don't know why they didn't. I just simply don't know.
I spoke to Counselor McGee when and he said that he had talked to the planning board, and this was going to be the first meeting when they were both boards were going to meet together. And he said that everybody had collaborated, and they met several times, and they had actually come to an understanding to clean up whatever inconsistencies in the language, not the intent, but the language. And that's what we would have before us tonight, and it would be all set, and we could just move on.
And that was the general understanding I had as well, but I otherwise don't know. Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think part of the delay that we're all experiencing here is the fact that there is prior to recently, there's been no ability for anyone to have a sign on property that's not already property that they own, where your business is located. So we're drafting this ordinance from scratch for then the ability for some other business or entity to then apply for a special permit or to craft this ordinance in such a way that it's allowed by right within particular dimensions. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that it's not like we're creating unnecessary hoops, that part of the process is trying to figure out what is the sign ordinance that folks can apply for. And I think that what happened here was we had started to meet separately, ordinance and planning board. Planning board passed a very comprehensive sign ordinance. The ordinance committee and then the full city council passed something that was conflicting the previous language that was already on the books. And so Councilor McGee, President McGee, filed this order twice to raise it again so that we could start to make some progress on it. And I think that there was we were slow to move on taking it up again. So I think that's where the delay and sense that things are taking a long time is coming from. But it's not, there's nothing to apply for, there's nothing to even allow for these accessory signs until we finalize this ordinance here.
Just to be clear, I asked Counselor McGee to refile the order so that the advertising would be timely, because in that period of time, I had been trying to convene a joint public hearing, which I thought was agreed to, and which the administrative assistant attempted to advertise for. And so here we are. My goal, and in all that time, and I apologize that I spent that time to do that, but that was why I used the time, to try to have it be user-friendly for the applicants. We are here to serve the public. That's our role, whether we're elected or whether we're appointed to boards in this city. That's how I see our respective roles. And, I'm sorry that the time spent did not result in the desired outcome, but that is what happened. Thank you.
I'm the eternal optimist.
Well,
It is what it is, so we'll just deal with what we have here now and move forward.
and perseverance is a gift. Mr. Eager.
Carl Eager, 1966 Northampton Street. If I'm to speak, I would speak as the alter ego to Gary Rohn. And it would be with the simple reason I would empathize with him that there are a lot of things that I'm sure he'd love to say. But having made the major investment that he has, and the taxes he pays, and the jobs he's created, and all the community service things that he does, this is a very, very poor way of acknowledging such. Up there it says makers of law. That's right here. City councilors. Not the mayor, not those of us that serve in appointed positions, and even those that are in the payroll and city government. You make this process. If it's to work right, you do your dirty linen, and it's not dirty linen. That's the irony. But it's doing that behind the scenes to make this operation work to the advantage of all of us, where we put our best foot forward. I wasn't even going to stand up. I sat here and I said to myself, my God, I served here in the early 60s. How many years ago is that? Things haven't changed. It's unbelievable. And now I can understand why my wife keeps telling me, when are you going to say a 2-letter word instead of a 3-letter word? No instead of yes. No, don't serve. I want a piece of our life. And that's because when I go home, she sees how frustrated I am. Because the process isn't working. The process of government is not working. You're not the enemy. You're not the enemy. You're not the enemy. You're not the enemy. No, you, none of us. But we've created a monster called government service. We've created these laws to the degree of minutia that you can't even take one step forward. We keep taking 3, 4 back. I'm disgusted with the process. Very discouraged. I empathize with your responsibilities. But that is nothing but an excuse. This is an embarrassment as I sit here that this man has gone through what he has gone through to put up a sign. And he didn't do it when he said that he wanted to be able to put time on there and to be able to announce that there are various public-spirited things that are occurring. He did it because that's the kind of a guy he is. He's a good-spirited person, good community-minded person. And when I'm thinking of as he sits here, he's having to go through, we're going to be leaving to come back again for this. Sad, terribly sad. I regret to say.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Carl, thank you for the remarks, and everybody always at a public hearing, the remarks are great. Problem with the remarks we're hearing this evening is tonight's not about Gary Rome. It's about a lot more. And there's something at play here that is something I have not seen since the 60s and 70s in government in Holyoke. And this is wrong, what we're being asked to do. This takes away any control over a sign on 91 north or south. Carl, when you served on the Board of Aldermen in the 60s, the charter had the Board of Aldermen vote on every billboard that went up on 91. There was never more than 7. And in the 80s and 90s, we were getting requests right and left for billboards because it was the nature of marketing and the nature of traffic increasing on our highways. We eliminated that, and we came up with ordinances that made sense. The one thing we didn't know how to control was what Gary Rome needs and what we want Gary Rome to get, and that's a sign on land that is not his and not abutting his. That is a non-accessory sign, which last year, despite the planning board not once coming to one of our meetings, we crafted language, we crafted a special permit, we voted on that special permit to allow for that to happen. It didn't happen, why? Because the building commissioner said it's not right? Fine. President McGee put the language, said, let's make this right with the way the building commissioner wants it, who hasn't come to a meeting yet, and let's make this work for Gary Rome. That's fine too. Except when you craft the language that eliminates all control over signs on 91, with the exception of getting a building permit, that is what I'm upset about. And that's not what we bought into when we did all this last year and this year. I went to the mayor behind the scenes, Carl, because his planning board, his appointments, with the exception of maybe 2, are out of control. They don't care about the city council, they're doing what they want to do, and they're ignoring. We can't even get the staff, which by ordinance should be coming to these meetings, and I said this last year, Attorney Wilson and Gary Rome should not have been in here drafting language for a special permit. It should have been the planning board with the city council working on that language with the help of our law department. And not once did that happen last year. Mayor said to me 1 month ago, "What's wrong with the planning board?" And I walked out of his office. I can't vote for something that will let land owned by Eric Shore put up 7 billboard signs that are there, whether they flash every 24 hours or not. I can't vote on something that will allow the Delaney House to put up signs anywhere they want for anybody that wants to advertise on 91. I can't allow us to vote for something that, with nothing but a building permit, can put up signs by the Holyoke Mall without controls. If the planning board was here, they would have heard what I just said, and we wouldn't be sitting here with a draft like this, which is nonsense.
And I would just like to add that when Counselor McGee filed the order, that was his intent. I discussed it with him personally, and he indicated to me his intent was simply to get it so there was not a conflict between one-sided, two-sided, and how big the sign could be. So how we got into these weeds is the same problem that we had the last time when an order that was very narrow that was filed turned into a whole rewrite of the entire sign ordinance for the city, which was not the order, which was not what was advertised in the public hearing. And so we're going down that road again, but the committee is going to, based on the comments I'm hearing, stay narrowly focused. But we do have to wait for the planning board to make its recommendation because we have to consider their recommendation. Oh, yeah. Yes?
I think that I was sitting here when we voted for this special permit.
Right.
I think this is crazy and completely out of control. I think that my suggestion is that Crystal talk to the building department, find out if Gary's gonna get his permit, and move on. I think that you should do that because I mean he have been waiting for months, and I was here last December.
Right.
This is crazy.
And that's what we want to do.
So I mean maybe that suggestion will be better than have this guy hostage over here. I mean,
But he won't issue the building permit.
yeah.
Sure. You have to be at the mic, yeah.
Attorney Tom, is there any way other than violence that you can make the planning board come to a meeting?
The planning board, no. The planning director and
Okay.
and
The planning
assistant director
staff, then.
should be here. But their boss is the mayor, and the mayor is ignoring us, telling the mayor that we need them here in these types of meetings.
'Cause again, like you guys, I did speak to President Counselor McGee, and he had said that it's going to be 6:30 planning. It's the first meeting they have together. It's going to be April 10th. Chairperson Vacan and I had this conversation. Everybody, and at the last minute, is that what I'm understanding? The last minute, this just didn't happen?
Ryan went to schedule it and run the ad
Right.
and let them know that, you know, we have our hearings at 6:30. As you can see, half the committee doesn't get here at 6:30. You know, it's hard for us to go to 5:30. And so, but they came back and said, we're meeting at 5:30, after I thought through Marcos, everything was set. He was the communicator back to the planning board.
Can we call him on a cell phone? I mean, I understand where you guys are coming from, but this is a 15
No,
month.
and
And I don't want to
I
keep
hear
saying
you.
this, but, I mean, I thought that, maybe I'm confused with separation of powers, but I just,
this isn't about that.
no, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, there's no way to make a call and say, can somebody come down here? That's my question. I mean,
I have a question. Sorry to keep intervening, because this is not what I do. I don't know your craft like you do, but my understanding, after talking to the building commissioner, that all he wanted cleaned up was the language so it would be consistent. And last time we had a recommendation from the planning board, we decided, well, your council decided that we don't want to do that. This is what we want to do. So it's my understanding that this is the recommendation from the planning board, because this is what came out of the planning board. So this is their recommendation. So I would recommend that we do not include this adding 6.4.3, but in fact, we keep number 13, which is what you had before, and now we've accomplished what we want to accomplish.
Exactly.
And we still have the language which is consistent with the sign ordinances, so that the building commissioner can approve our sign, which will be under 40 square feet, and that's all that we need to do.
Exactly.
Can I ask a
Counselor
question?
Lisi?
Thank you. So I apologize for coming in a bit late. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this document the way that it is written currently, Crystal. So you're talking about, so I see the first thing it says, delete section 6.4.7 non-accessory signs. And then does that include the entire section underneath that, from definitions through uses 1 through 13? Or does a 1 through 13 remain in place?
Nope, that deletes the entire thing.
Yeah. And so in place, we have section 2 is definitions, and we create something called off-premises signs.
Correct.
And it becomes a subsection of the more comprehensive sign ordinance, as opposed to this special permit that was crafted originally.
Right, so it's added into the current section of definitions that are in our all-encompassing sign ordinance.
Okay, so really the first page and everything through 13, and then the next section would be completely deleted. And that's the part that was conflicting, is that what I understand?
Right, various portions of it were conflicting. So, I mean, I could walk you through some of how that.
No, I just want to make sure I understand, because it's still there, and all I saw was deleting the first part and not understanding how far down that went. So it's going all the way through until the first adding in its place, section 2, and then adding in its place. So, I mean, it sounds like, if there's a desire to create this as a special permit, then I think that we can, lift some of the language here. So instead of non-accessory signs, it would be not like non-premise signs, or whatever the language is, off-premise. Off-premise signs shall be allowed by way of the special permit, and they have to fit this criteria.
Right, this is just draft language. If you'd like to add language, move language, that's what it's here for. So, I mean, open meeting law, we can't all have this discussion in emails, so it has to be done here. So as much as, what's before you may not be exactly what you were thinking, I have to take notes, I have to confer with other departments, and you get this draft language. So this is where we need to fix it.
Right.
Crystal, it shouldn't be you. It should be Marcus Marrero, Damon Cody, and Jeff Burkott sitting right in front of us.
I'm here
With
to
or
be.
without the planning commission.
We hear you. All right, so I'm not seeing anyone else at this time that wishes to add information for consideration in the public hearing. Procedurally, we can close the public hearing, and then we need to wait for the planning board to give us their recommendation, or we can leave the public hearing open. What is the will of the committee? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but the planning board met, and they also met with legal counsel, and then this is their recommendation right here, right? So can't you act on their recommendation that is here?
Okay, so I will check my phone right now to see if anybody sent me any communication.
Where did this come from?
But
Which one,
that,
what are you looking at?
that has,
Your
My draft legal language?
that,
So I met with a member of the planning department and the building department, and we craft this. I did not meet with the entire planning board. They're discussing that, I believe, tonight.
they had their
They have the
hearing
same draft in
at
front of them.
5:30. For all we know, I guess, we're still having our hearing. I suppose theoretically, they could still be having theirs.
again, I run middleman, so I can either go to the planning board hearing and discuss draft language there to comply with open meeting law, or I can be here.
We
This
need you
is
here.
where Joe's frustration comes in.
Exactly, and we need planning people here. Because at this point, we don't know if they closed their hearing, we don't know if they made a recommendation. My request to them was, because I understood it was a done thing, that they would have their hearing, it would take 10 minutes, and somebody would walk over and give us the letter from the planning board. That is what I fully thought would happen until it didn't. And that's all I can tell you. I really don't know what happened at the planning board, but we'll be here.
They continued their hearing, from what I understand.
You know that?
Yeah.
I text Marcus, he hasn't responded yet.
So, how do we know that they continued the public hearing? I'm sorry?
Chris is over there from our office.
Oh,
Gives me intel.
so,
I think we would have been there had we been told that they were, say, 5:30.
But Toby, don't you, this is not about Gary and you.
No, I get it.
This is about eliminating, without any input from us at all, I've already voted for Gary's special permit. We drafted language, Gary's was set to go last year. It makes no sense that because the building commissioner said it doesn't connect to the rest of the sign language, we got to adjust it. And they worked on it. They didn't work on connecting, allowing a sign by special permit. They redrafted the entire language, eliminating a special permit and allowing for signs up and down 91 with no discretion but a building permit. And if it meets the criteria in the language here. And Crystal, am I anywhere close to saying what this is?
But it says only IG zone, so why would it be allowed up and down 91?
The closer you get to the highway, the state has regulations too.
Counselor Anderson Burgos.
My head's about to crack, so I need to say something. What's going on here is a lack of communication. We have two departments or two bodies that are not meeting, and they need to start meeting. So if I have to personally go out and knock on doors and get these people here, I will. But if they're not showing up, I need to know why. Okay, so we need to start communicating and working with each other, because businesses like Gary Rome are suffering. And to me, I didn't knock on doors, 1,000 doors, over and over to see this continuing. This needs to end. We need to work together.
I would just also say that when we met with the building commissioner shortly after, and he said, you need to change this, this, and this. That's it. That's it. That's all he said was, if you change this, this, and this, it'll be compliant, and I'm good with it.
And that's all we're looking to do.
Right. And I don't know why it would require all this,
I don't either.
you know.
Sure.
Where do we go from here? I mean, you're asking, rightly so, that you want to have a meeting with planning. Planning doesn't show up. Planning commission, planning board, planning people, whoever, don't show up. I asked before, maybe I've misunderstood, you can't force them to come to a meeting.
No. We cannot force the planning board to meet. They're a separate body that is an advisory body to the council. For convenience of the applicants and to be business friendly, we would meet together when it's a joint public hearing that both boards have to hear something. Some are, some aren't. But when they are, it's business friendly for us to meet together with the applicant instead of making you run back and forth.
Maybe I asked the wrong question.
But
I'm sorry, I
the
asked the wrong
staff
question.
should be showing if we are saying we need you at a meeting.
Let me ask the question a different way. Can you force the planning, can we set them, if we had to, which we don't want to do, set another meeting and know that planning staff will be there, or will we go through the same situation? I can't think of an adjective.
And I'm not saying this to pass the buck, but the planning staff work for the mayor, and so if you wanted assurance that they would be at a meeting, the mayor would have to stipulate to them that they are to be at the meeting.
So maybe I'm somewhat naive, but I think that you passed a special permit, you passed an ordinance, right? We
Yes.
didn't have a special permit, correct?
Passed an ordinance that would allow it by special
So
permit.
can we craft, let's just stick with the ordinance that you've already approved, that's already a law. Can't we just craft our special permit to be specific enough to list it in such a way that the building commissioner can approve the sign permit? So in other words, we don't have to have another planning board meeting, we don't have to have any more public hearings, we don't need the full city council to approve anything else other than a special permit that is written in such a way to be specific enough to be consistent with what the building commissioner wants, and then it's a done deal.
What you're saying is correct, but any time that we make an amendment to an ordinance, even if it is a technical one, and we have gone through this process a couple of times when there were unintentional language things that contradicted itself in other things that we have passed.
Right.
Unfortunately, when you make any language change to an ordinance, we have to go through this process. But I was very clear in the communications I've had with people that the order filed was narrow, the intent was narrow, simply to make it work the way it had intended to work, barring those 3 problems that were found when the building permit was sought.
Right.
And that's all we are seeking to correct here. Nothing more, nothing less.
Right, in the most expeditious way
Yes.
possible. So if that's the case, this body can rule, right?
But we do have to wait for a recommendation from the planning board because it's a matter of law. Counselor Lisi?
So, just in terms of procedure, we can close our hearing, and we can tell Crystal, these are the things that, we'd like to see, and when we get the recommendation from the planning board, whether or not they meet with us, we can or do not have to accept the recommendations that they are making.
That is correct, but as a matter of time and expediency, we can't do it tonight. We have to wait until we get the recommendation, and they have continued their hearing. So
Right, but
I
I
don't
think
know what their issues are.
I think what Councilor Lisi is saying is that you as a body can make you can decide the way you want it to be.
Yes, we can.
And then you could tell planning, this is the way we want it to be, and if they like it or they don't like it, you can do what you see fit.
Correct.
So is tonight the night to tell
So.
the craft the way that it needs to be?
So back a ways, but I didn't want to shut off any discussion or people giving their opinions on what is going on. I was seeking from the committee whether they wanted to make a motion to close the public hearing. I don't see where we are going to learn more information that's going to inform our decision in this matter. So from that point of view, we could close the hearing. Having said that, there was an occasion where we closed the hearing once and the planning board did not act within the time frame, and then the whole process became problematic. I would have to have faith that they will get back to us timely so that we wouldn't run into that kind of a problem. But there is a slight risk in closing the public hearing while the planning board has theirs open. But I don't see any reason from our point of view why we need to keep it open, except for that fact. Counselor Lisi?
I don't think that we need to keep the hearing open. I think we can close it. But I also, as I delve more deeply into this, I do think that in all the sections that we're, adding in its place is where the corrections and conflicts have been mitigated. And then from there, we can say, this is either by right or by special permit. So, I do think that Crystal has done, the homework in terms of communicating between the different departments that are related to this. And so she's getting technical feedback. And I think that she's been conveying to us what the technical feedback is. So, I think I would like to close the hearing and make some amendments to the draft and say that would be the working draft that we're going to look at and compare our draft to the planning board recommendation thereafter.
Is that a motion?
Sure, on the motion.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
To close the public hearing?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. So
The
the
clock is ticking now. With or without the planning board, we get the vote in 45 days, Crystal? No, because this is what happened last year.
It is what
And this is
happened.
nonsense.
It is what happened.
By law, which we've submitted an opinion to you in the past, after the planning board closes their public hearing, then you have they have however many days to get it to you, and you have 20 days to,
And if they never close their public hearing,
it stays open.
No.
or eternity.
Like I said, do you want
I'd
to
like
get
to
into
see that
this
stand
now?
up in a court a lot.
Well, there is also
It's
in,
all over the place. We submitted an opinion.
No.
Let's not do this
No,
tonight.
because all over the
Right.
place,
all right. But
planning
there,
boards
but there,
work with the legislative body.
there is also in state law, a reference to a 65-day time limit for the hearings to be held by all parties. So there are time limits, but the whole point of even discussing the potential of 45 or 21 or 60 days, to me, is ridiculous. This is a 10-minute discussion. It's a 3-item problem, and that's how long it should have taken to fix it. And so our hearing is closed. We can send our recommendations over to Crystal. I'm going to say what I said to Crystal from the very first time that I heard that the building permit would not be given, which I thought was, in light of the scrolling signs and everything else I see through the city, I thought, being very precise on the matter of the ordinance, which was not something I had generally seen a lot of. So that took me back in the first place. But then subsequent to that, I made it clear to the people that I was talking to. I asked Mr. Cody what the basis for his inability to give the permit was, and he said it was non-compliance with the current sign ordinances. They then collaborated through legal to do it. I commend Crystal for the work she's done, but quite frankly, it's not her job. It's the planning staff, the building commissioner, it's their job. And if they could all sit in the back room making up this language, they could have come in public and talked about the language. When we crafted the marijuana ordinance, there was great collaboration. We couldn't get enough memos, letters, and updates from everybody in every department. Remember that? And that is the level of collaboration that can happen, and that is the level of collaboration you hear Councilor McGivern, and also you can add me to the list, seeking and expecting from the people that are paid with our hard-earned tax dollars. So our hearing is closed. My request to legal is to delete anything in this that is extending past the scope of the ordinance we have already passed, which is what I've said from the very beginning, and that would include any expansion of signs up to 300 feet in the city anywhere other than the specific definition that we put into place for the off-premises signs. And the change from 300 square feet to, from 40 had not really struck me until I began to understand what the implications of it were. So that would be my request to legal, to come back to us with the narrow crafting to make the building permit be allowed to be given. Councilor Lisi?
So you're saying that you want, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying at all.
Oh, well, I was only recognizing you because you had wanted to make some amendments for legal to,
Yeah, but then you just directed legal to make a whole number sweeping sets of amendments that I'm really having a hard time following.
no, I'm asking them to take away the amendments that had all expanded the scope of what we passed last year. That's all I'm asking.
Can you clarify what you want me to delete? I don't,
Anything that expands the use of signs up to 300 feet.
it has, if it's in an IG zone, it has to comply with the chart. If you want to limit off-premises signs to a certain square footage, then I would suggest making that amendment.
I want to limit off-premises signs to special permit by the city council. I do not want it as of right. We wanted to see what impact it would have. We wanted to be business-friendly. We wanted to see what impact it would have on the surrounding businesses one of which has objected. So we're trying to be business-friendly and also not do anything that is gonna make other businesses feel that they're being harmed.
So then can you make whatever amendments you want to make, and I will draft that for you, but an ever-sweeping deletion,
So let's start from the beginning. So we have, section 1 is staying, right? Then we can pretend that the whole next section through 13 does not exist. Is that correct?
correct.
And then the following section, deleting sign off premises is also deleted. So then so the way this reads in a new ordinance would say, section 1, general regulations. Then we go all the way down to section 2, definitions. And the only thing that we're adding is something called an off-premise sign, correct?
So we took away the including billboards. So if it's easier for the people editing our ordinances, rather than tell them take out the last 2 words, to just rewrite the paragraph. So it looks to me like all they took out from definition sign off premises is that last part after the semicolon, including billboards, because we don't include billboards in the city yet.
So signs off-premise is a section number 2 definition, and section number 2 definition regarding billboards is a separate definition that is a sign greater than 300 square feet. And as I understand the sign ordinance that's not in full text before us, we don't allow billboards in the city currently.
Correct.
So we don't have to worry about billboards. We're just defining them here. Billboards are not allowed in the city anywhere. So those are signs greater than 300 feet.
No, not now.
And not even in this draft, we don't allow them.
In current ordinance, a billboard is a freestanding sign larger than 40 square feet. In the current ordinance that exists.
A billboard is defined?
So that would only be under, this is where we ran into the problem. That's a definition built under a specific section on non-accessory signs. So whether that applies to the entire sign ordinance, it's in a different set of definitions.
I see. So
Kind of weird.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So what you're saying is that previously, billboards were considered a subsection of non-accessory signs and therefore had the limitation of 40 square feet.
For what was passed by ordinance recently that we're now trying to fix, billboards were defined under non-accessory signs. Prior to that, our all-encompassing sign ordinance said, I believe it said billboards, and then it said see a different section. So prior to what was passed, there was no specific definition for billboards. So we've made it above and beyond what would be allowed, because they're not allowed.
So we define it and then we
300
just say
square
that
feet.
it's not allowed,
Right.
correct? So we actually have a definition there. So off-premise signs can then be various sign limitations depending on the business size, the square footage, correct? That's the chart.
Right, so it references the chart, and if there's various square footage of signs based on whether they're by right or by special permit.
And
in
do
each
any of them
district.
approach, in terms of the dimensions, do any of them approach 300 square feet?
Business highway, which is, there's asterisk next to it, is 200 square feet by right or 300 square feet by special permit, and
But-
the asterisk reads,
But off-premise signs are only allowed in IG zones,
correct,
so business highway shouldn't be relevant.
it's not relevant here.
And so can you just go again into the IG zones, what the size limitation would be, depending on
So
the,
it's 75 square feet by right and 150 square feet by special permit.
okay.
So as a point of clarification, that grid is talking not about freestanding signs located off premises, correct?
In business and industrial districts, it's just size limitations. It would qualify any sign in the city.
That's the sign ordinance, and what we're talking about here in terms of the off-premise signs is they're only allowed in IG, and they have to follow the size limitations governed by the business industrial table.
Right, but what we did is we crafted a limit as to what would then become a billboard, because we were crafting a new ordinance to allow for freestanding signs off premises, which we have never had. So we set a size limitation so that we then would be saying, this is an off-premises sign, this is a billboard. There's a huge difference between 40 square feet and 300 square feet, to Counselor McGivern's concern. And it was never viewed as of right. It was always special permit.
And we could still create this as special permit, but I think we need to create some guidelines so that we even, when we have the ability to grant a special permit, can say, okay, your sign is 32 feet by 40 feet, therefore the entire square footage is however many feet, and that's within our zoning ordinances, or that's with not, and therefore you need to amend it if you want your special permit, or you need to do something else, otherwise we're not going to give you the special permit. I don't think that.
Right, so I do believe that is what we attempted to do by saying that it had to be smaller than 40 square feet, which is, if you want to put in a definition, let's not talk about billboards, let's just talk about a definition for an off-premises sign, that it is 40 square feet or less. And let's not talk about billboards, which we do not allow in the city, so why do we care to define them or measure them or anything else about them? We don't allow them.
Because our current definition says billboards, C sign, off premises, which doesn't make any sense if we don't allow billboards. They're pointing them to off premises signs, which we're saying shouldn't be quantified as billboards because you don't allow them. So we've defined billboards as anything greater than 300 square feet because those already aren't allowed in the city. So rather than commingle billboard and off premises, we've separated them. Does that make sense?
It does, but then
Okay.
then would you still not want to define off-premises sign as
That's up to you.
Off-premises sign up to 40 feet, which is what we were doing there.
Well,
We were doing it by saying anything above that is a billboard. We were trying to differentiate between the two, but we didn't want to get into the billboard discussion. We just wanted to define what we were doing.
I would just do your size limitations for off premises if you want size limitations on those, and let's just, because billboards aren't allowed already, let's just leave them as defined rather than pointing to another section.
Right, it just becomes confusing.
So whatever
and
square foot.
so you were saying, sorry, it was over 150 square feet by special permit, and then less up to what was by right?
75 by right, 150 special permit.
But, okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to add for Crystal to work on, to come back with?
Can I just ask, under suspended necessary rules, I'd like to ask Mr. Rome a question, if you don't mind. Is there a second?
Sure. 2 seconds.
Second.
All in
Thank you.
favor? Aye.
Aye. Thanks.
This is not public hearing at this point.
No, that's just a question. So I know that you have a sign envisioned. So do you know what the square footage for that sign was?
It is 37.79 square feet
Total?
total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, and that's going to have reach and visibility. So a 40-foot sign.
Well, I would love for it to be bigger, right? It's, actually, when you talk about my competition, it's 1/7 the size of my competition sign in Springfield. But I understand, so we're under 40 feet.
The table goes to 75, well, we'll make friends in the neighborhood. I'm only kidding.
Well, I think that's, I mean, if signs are already allowed in that district by the chart, they have to be on your own property though, right?
Correct.
So signs on your own property can be up to 75 square feet in that district.
Correct.
And in that district, they already can be on your own property up to 150 square feet
By special permit, yes.
by special permit. But we can see those signs there, right? So I mean, to me, it seems like those are the signs that we're already allowing in that district. The only thing that this is creating is the ability for someone to put a sign on somebody else's property with their permission. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then I don't see why we would have an arbitrary 40-foot, square-foot limit when those other signs are already allowed in those areas.
Well, in the prior public hearings, we did have objection from one of the abutters relative to the whole ordinance happening. And so I think what we did is craft an ordinance that was attempting to give a business something they need to get what they need to grow their business, and not feel the businesses that currently made a huge improvement in their property based on their understanding of the zoning. So we're just trying to, we're trying to do the win-win if we can. So that's what we did.
So then I'd be interested in perhaps allowing 40 square feet by right and then 75 by special permit, 75 or greater by special permit. I mean, these are just ideas that we're throwing out here for discussion, but it seems if that 40-foot square foot sign is going to be dwarfed in comparison to what's already allowed there, then it doesn't make any sense to have a special permit for something that's going to be dwarfed in comparison to the other signs there. Special permit when we're getting to something that would be more like those other signs that are found in the area. I don't know how other people feel about that at the moment.
Well,
I don't think, okay, so now we're breaking our rules around the public hearing, because now we're taking in new information about changing.
I have a
the
question,
don't
I have a
think
question for
it's-
Mr. Rowe.
public hearing, and so we really can't.
I don't think
entertain
it's-
that at this time. We can discuss them among ourselves and make amendments, but we can't seek, because we close the public hearing.
Can I ask a question to the city solicitor?
Counselor McGivern?
Krista, on digital signs, which is my main concern, the new language, or the proposed language that we're adding after deleting the existing language. The sign cannot change except for once every 24 hours?
Correct.
I mean, is that the type of sign that was proposed by Mr. Rome?
He had mentioned that he was looking to put messages on the sign as part of helping the community, as well as a possible time and weather, which time and temperature are already
That's under the
allowed.
current ordinance.
So his idea to put messages is where I believe we got the new language. So instead of just time and temperature, we've now added image, text, or message. And because you don't want it changing too often to distract traffic, et cetera, once every 24 hours, I believe, is what was determined to be safe.
My issue, and Rebecca, it goes along to what you just said, is I've always thought we were controlling the amount of signs, especially the amount of digital signs in this area. And that's the reason I'm upset about this.
So if I may,
Counselor Lisi?
thank you. So when I read the section on electronic signs that we would be deleting and adding in its place, I think that so I think that when I read, no sign or advertising device shall in any district incorporate or be lighted by flashing, scrolling, blinking lights, or be designed to attract attention by changing and light. So I think of that as like a neon type of flashing.
There's one at the church right around the block.
Or with the scrolling text. And I think this digital sign, because technology has changed, would be a fixed image, but it's generated electronically. I don't know if you've been up and down 91 and have seen even full-size digital billboards. And it's not that the billboard is changing or flashing or doing anything, but it's created through a digital screen as opposed to something that would be a printed screen. And I think that this is updating, so it's still allowing, or I should say disallowing, those flashing, scrolling, neon, distracting type of digital signs, but digital signs that would have some sort of fixed image that's generated electronically would be allowed in this. And it has to be fixed for at least 24 hours. We could extend that time. We could say, you know, however many hours in a week. You know, I think that the issue here is that technology is changing, and people want to be able to have the ability to control the image on their sign that's generated electronically, as opposed to having to pay for a new sign, take down a sign, and put up a new sign every time they want to change the message.
I have no problem with that. That's what I voted on for a special permit last year for Mr. Rome, because I knew that's what it was gonna be. What's in front of the church and the high school is not that.
But that wouldn't be allowed.
Why are they up then?
That's still not allowed. I mean, yes, there's an enforcement issue for sure, right? And in the city, with all the issues that we have and we're dealing with, there are enforcement issues left and right that we're not able to keep up with. But do we want to just, you know, craft things that are not going to be in compliant, or are we going to craft things and say, this is how we want to see things look moving forward, and so, you know, we can control these things moving forward, and then we can, when we're caught up on falling buildings, perhaps we can work to enforce scrolling messages on churches.
What we did last year, we avoided all this by the way we did this last year.
Exactly.
I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
We crafted language to allow a special permit to be controlled by the discretion of the city council that would allow such a sign as is being proposed by Mr. Rome to go up in an area that is not allowed in the current zoning by special permit. That's all we did.
Or anyone else who wanted in an IG zone to put up an off-premises sign. So what we would like to do, if you want to put the thing that you say this language allows for what our intention was, you could add the language just under off-premises signs, but not for every sign in the city. Because this looks like it's for every sign in the city.
You mean for the electronic signs?
Yeah.
Can move it under
Make it
off-premises.
just for off-premises signs. Then I think the problem is solved, because then it limits it to off-premises signs in the IG zone. This expands it to every sign in the city, which was not the intent.
Do you want time and temperature to still be allowed in the city?
It could be allowed, but
Well, I mean, that's where the prior language is coming from.
I got time
So-
and temperature on my dashboard, Gary.
But you're
he was
talking
only
about,
doing it
And I
to
didn't even
me.
buy a car from you yet.
So, anyway, my point is that if we expand it and allow the broader use of the digital that doesn't require the time and temperature, and just keep it contained in the off-premises sign ordinance, then we have met the intent of the committee.
That's fine.
and
My
the
other
city
concern,
council.
but I will forego it for now, is the quantity of these signs that can be put up without controls. But that can be for another evening if the committee's happy with that language.
Under off-premises only and special permit by the city council.
I don't want to go back to the special permit. I know it's the answer, it was the answer last year, but in fairness to our biggest developer in the city of Hoyoke in a long time, I think we need to go forward and address special permits and quantity of signs later.
Okay with me.
So if we had a recommendation, we'd be able to pass this.
Yes.
so Linda,
Or if we wait that time period, we'll be able to
Can't
pass
pass
this.
anything yet.
can I clarify, Linda? So you want the electronic signs as written, so that deleting section to just stay. So rather than delete it where it is under 643 number 6, leave that under the all-encompassing signs, because that's how it reads now. And then put the special language of image, text, or message area changing 24 hours, make that part of the off-premises section?
No. That's not what we want to do. Because this becomes more restrictive for all electronic signs throughout the entire city.
That's what I want to
That's what
do.
we want.
Yeah, so I think we want to keep it.
No, this is less restrictive.
No.
in a sense.
So it's whether you want images and text or time and temperature. That's really all this
Time
is.
time and temperature becomes a loophole for anyone in the city to put any flashing electronic sign that they want, as long as they're putting time and temperature on there. Ours, our new one that we're looking at, says flashing signs, crazy signs are not allowed, but digital signs, so signs that create some sort of digital image, are allowed within this narrow subset of requirements. Image, text, or message area may only change within 24 hours.
No, the current language doesn't allow for any crazy flashing.
No, I know.
Filing our man.
That stays the same. That stays the same.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that the time and temperature created a loophole where you could put up a sign, as long as a digital sign, as long as you had time and temperature. And this new version that we're creating says that's not allowed at all. If you're going to put up a digital sign, it can only change its appearance in any way, shape, or form within 24 hours. So no scrolling text is allowed, no blinking light, no flashing. I mean, and that is the same as before. And there's no loophole to get out with the time and temperature.
It's all the same. The only difference is whether you're just displaying time and temperature as part of your electronic sign, no flashing, no anything, or whether you're allowing, there's no real loophole in the prior language, because they were still not allowed to have any scrolling, blinking, or anything that would attract attention. It was a fixed banner electronic sign using changeable lights to convey time and temperature. So, I mean, I guess potentially you could change your time and temperature from different colors throughout the day if you wanted, but it was still only time and temperature. Now we're saying, rather than just time and temperature, they're allowed to have image, text, or various messages that could only change every 24 hours.
No, look at what it says. It says fixed banners or electronic signs using changeable lights to convey time, temperature shall be exempt from this prohibition. So that means fixed banners or electronic signs that use lights to convey time and temperature shall be exempt. So it creates a loophole, and we've seen that happen with the gas station, for example, that wanted a sign recently.
We have the scrolling signs where we say you have no scrolling signs. So why would we want to expand something when we're already having problems enforcing what we have?
This is not expanding
But
it.
I think the compromise would be to put in the new language under off-premises signs only and see what the effect is that it has. And then if it doesn't have a bad effect, we can look at it expanding it further down the road.
I think the changeable lights just refers to the kind of lights. I don't think it's a loophole, but maybe it's how you read it.
The only thing time and temperature is it's, the sign's gonna have time, the sign's gonna have temperature, but time and temperature changes every second. That's the only reason we put that language in there, is because, 1 o'clock is 2 o'clock. 70 degrees just became 69 degrees.
Okay, we need to wrap this up, folks. So if we have no further amendments for her, we
Not at
have
this
somebody
time, right?
waiting for us on another matter, and we have a long agenda left. And now we spent an hour and a half. So if there's no further information to give to Crystal to bring back to us, the public hearing is closed. We will
Motion to
consider
table.
revised language. And on the motion to table, is there a second?
Second.
On favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On item 2, I'll entertain a motion to take up item 2 and open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 3, I apologize.
Still second it.
Thank you. All in favor? I apologize, I wish it was different.
Joe took off.
Yes. So motion to take up item 3 and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 3 was filed by Counselor Bartley, ordered that the city council create a temporary sign ordinance that regulates when such temporary signs can be placed in homeowners' yards and on commercial buildings or otherwise in public view. The ordinance should regulate when the signs can be installed, the sign size, as well as the deadline by which the sign must be removed. So, The maker of the order was not able to attend tonight due to a family emergency, which I should have announced earlier, or family medical issue. So I would accept a motion to continue the public hearing to April 24th,
Sure, so moved. At 6:30
which is our
PM.
next regular committee meeting. And so that way, the maker of the order will be able to fully discuss the language.
Okay,
Okay.
so moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
30 PM.
Yeah, so the public hearing is continued to April 24th at 6:30 PM. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So in the interest that we have a guest, and there was a technical issue with posting the agenda. So there were two ordinance agendas posted, one that had the public hearings and the item on the debit card, and the other one that had most of the other items. There were two separate, they were both properly on the board in time, but they're on two separate pieces of paper. I would ask,
Is this
to
item
go-
number 10?
yeah, I would ask to go out of order. For
Motion to
item-
suspend the necessary rules and take up item number 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd also ask for a suspension of rules so that the maker of the original order could address it to the committee.
Sure, so motion to suspend the rules to allow the maker of the order, Counselor Lopez, to address us.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome, Counselor Lopez. Former, well, well, you know, when you're a mayor and a governor, you're always.
No. Basically, back in December, I find out the money from the Hispanic family, first of all, was taken to buy the Christmas tree. And we still owe that money. We still owe the guy from the stage and the sound system. The mayor so far refused to pay. I know that we have been going back and forth. It is what it is, so the money's not there. I think that was an illegal move because it was transferred without even the city council approval, but we still owe that money. So, and he took $5,000 for the stage and sound, and he also went to the DPW and took the other $5,000 for the festival. So he bought the Christmas tree, which you saw it. But I mean, it created another problem. I wasn't aware when I filed the order, because I find out like 3 days before I filed this order, or 4, that there was a debit card floating around the city. And then I filed the order with all that information that you have there. So there's some, we have been going back and forth with emails. There have been some allegations that $5,000 for 1 day of the festival, which I agree, but we never were given, the time to talk or discuss. All the plan that we have, the money was just taken and not paid the guy who is from Boston. And not only that, if you go around asking for a quote or the same type of sound that we have, it's more than $5,000. But so we are in trouble. We haven't paid, so we have to go into Plan B, which I'm not going to even discuss, because that's not what I want to do. But we don't have another plan.
Right. Just to follow proper procedure, I just want to read the order.
Yes.
For anybody who is watching and for the public that's here. This order was filed by Counselor Lopez, ordered that the ordinance committee create an ordinance requesting that any city credit card or debit card given by the city must get approval from the city council. Also, that the city treasurer provide a report to the city council with the following details: who has a debit card or a credit card in the city, treasurer and auditor to provide a report to the city council with each credit card or debit card for the last 5 years, and that all active credit cards and debit cards be deactivated immediately, and that we get a printout of all purchases and transactions that the card has been used for. So just by way of update, the finance person of the school department had a debit card, and the procurement officer of the city had a debit card. I have been informed by the city solicitor that both of those have been submitted to him and are locked in the solicitor's office at this time, and that they are not being used. We did receive a summary sheet that the debit cards had been in effect since 2016. And subsequent to that, we have received some email sort of cut and pasted statements that I've asked our administrative assistant to print out in hard copy, because I haven't been able to, by emails, sort of to match them up and see, you know, how all those transactions may compare. So up until now, the committee has been collecting the information that was called for in the order, but so far, we have not taken action on actually creating the ordinance that would require for any debit or credit card to be issued by the city to have city council approval, which I personally think is a very good idea. Considering the fact that in public hearings, we learned that it was initially set with a cap of 2,500, which was then arbitrarily increased to 10,000 to accomplish the purchase, which defeated the whole point of it being treated with a limited amount like a petty cash account might be. And then there were various other procedural matters that came to light in a different meeting where prior approvals were not received before purchases were made, but rather sought after the fact. Any number of procedural problems that were somewhat addressed by the audit report, by that outside company, and then by our outside auditors themselves. So everything that's come to light really calls for more accountability and more double checking. And we've actually had recommendations that the city should not have a credit card or a debit card. So,
And actually, I think the recommendation was that a debit card is, the debit card is able to circumvent the municipal procurement laws because the money is,
instantaneous.
yeah, but a credit card would not be a violation.
Right.
So it's-
Not a violation procedurally, but we did have recommendation from our past procurement manager that we had a credit card, and it was fraught with problems of people not submitting the receipts, and it was a nightmare to have accountability relative to the credit card. So in those public hearings, we got that feedback on both types of cards. So your order requested that it wouldn't prohibit ever the use of a credit card or a debit card, but it would require that the city council approved it and had certain stipulations around it. So is there anything else that you wanted to add to that? I mean, given the bind on the other side with those bills not being paid, it seems it continues to be a problem.
Well, I mean, I don't mind being target, but I think that when you target the Hispanic, the completely Hispanic Latino community, I think I have a big problem with that, and I have to move to Plan B because I will not swallow anything like that. I will be honest to you, so I have to follow.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. So I just, this is the first I'm learning of this, and so I'm just curious, like, do you have something to like demonstrate that there was a commitment from the city or that money was supposed to be dedicated to the festival? I mean, I don't even know how the city.
Let me give you the background.
Say it again?
Let me give you the history, how that money was allocated in the budget. Mayor Sullivan decided to put that $5,000 in the budget ever since he was mayor for 10 years. I never asked for it. He did it. So now, when I never sign a paper, nobody from the committee signs any papers. Going back, you can go and check. So the problem this year, and I will be honest to you, and I have all the documents, is that there was another problem that I'm not going to discuss tonight because that's going to be part of the whole issue, where there were some problems at the festival. I mean, I can tell you that there was a high-ranking official from the fire department asking for $2,000 on the side. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So it was bad. And then this is what I take from this is like it's basically like getting back at you. That's what it is. But I have all the documents, and I'm not here to. We're gonna do what we have to do. I just want to be clear. I mean, this is something that if they do this to any other group in this city, they will be jumping, and you will have people in front of City Hall. And I don't think this is fair to have a guy from Boston, when you know that he's coming, he has been doing it for more than 10 years, getting paid the $5,000, and then at this last year, you decided that you're not gonna even pay him, not even return his phone calls. But last year, he was the one who provided the sound on the stage for Celebrate Holyoke. So this is completely unfair.
So it's a past practice, you're saying?
But I also heard you say that the festival only lasted 1 year last year as opposed to, I think it was 4 in the past?
Yes.
So does that change the amount that would be required for the sound?
Well, and I agree, yes. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to pay the guy without even talking to us.
So then,
And I just have one more question.
oh, sure.
Is there like a bill submitted to the city somewhere from this guy?
If you go back, I mean, you can ask. There's
But for this year, have they requested money from the city directly, or is it a request to the festival?
This is for this year, 2018. We're hoping that the money will be there.
No, I'm sorry. I mean
2017.
the year that you're talking about here. So this person from Boston, did they ask
Yeah, we
the
submitted.
festival for the money, or
Wait.
did they ask the city for the $5,000?
No, we submitted the paperwork to the city.
So they still, even
Either-
though they provided sound and stage for one night, they still submitted a bill for $5,000?
Well, they did, and we have an explanation, but we never got a chance to even discuss anything. So the money was just taken. I mean, I have emailed we were supposed to meet. That meeting never happened. And then now, I mean, you go back and forth. I mean, if you talk to the Parks Department, they're gonna tell you that this is not city property. It was a state park when they do Celebrate Holyoke there. So that doesn't make sense. And that's money from the city. I mean, there's a lot of lies.
And do you know where that bill, so the bill was submitted to, I mean, I don't, just because I'm not the one that's submitting bills to the cities, where does that go? To the purchasing department, to the treasurer's department?
Usually the bill will go to the Parks Department.
Parks Department. Okay.
And if you go back for years, have been that way. And if you look at the budget, it's there. I can show you. 2010.
Do you have that here?
Counselor, no, go ahead, Counselor Anderson Burgos.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you have,
Yeah.
have that paperwork here so that we can?
Well, I don't have all the paperwork. I will be honest to you, and it will be.
Just something for us to look at because.
Well, I can give you copies of the contract.
Yeah.
That it was never signed since day one, since Solomon was here. It was submitted.
So what I want to do is compare from 2017 and back.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount and the days that the stage and the
Yes.
sound and the lighting was all set up. Because from what I thought I heard was $5,000 for just.
$5,000 for just one day, is that correct?
That was the bill. Yes, yes. I'm not gonna lie to you, but what happened was we were supposed to meet and talk, but that never happened. So and then the money disappeared.
So for our committee purposes, just to be clear,
Yeah.
we're seeking
Yeah.
the warrants and the documentation from the city as to the basis that the money was taken out of those accounts for the purpose of the tree.
Okay.
He's on the other side of the equation.
Right.
We're looking for how did that money get spent on a tree? And he's telling us what the money always had been spent on, regardless of one bill, whether there's argument over one bill and how much it is or not. The issue is the source of the money and the purpose for which it was used. But what I'm hearing you say is you are advocating for us to craft an ordinance that exerts control over debit, credit, whatever, and to
Absolutely.
assure that nothing is spent on those cards that is not budgeted
Absolutely.
according
That's-
to the item. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I think. I'm not sure if the auditor sent us that on the tree. They were supposed to send us the lines, you know, because it didn't look like they were anything that you would buy a Christmas tree out of, you know, the budget lines,
Right.
from what I recalled. So we're still collecting some data on that, but it doesn't stop us from crafting and asking Crystal to give us some ordinance language that says, should there be any credit card or debit card contemplated to be used by the city, approval and authorization with limitations should be sought from the city council. I think we're all warm to that. I don't know. Are we warm to that as a committee?
To the city council having.
To
the ability to
authorize before a debit card or a credit card would be, because what it
send-
happened.
The whole card though, right? Not each
The-
transaction.
No,
Then
the
that's fine.
card, but that there would be limits set.
Yeah.
That had to be adhered to because there was moving limits. Who's on first? I had one person say they were the one that did it, and somebody said, no, they did it. It was just, for only having 3 people that it could have been, it was quite the moving target. So would that be accurate, that we can ask Crystal to craft ordinance language that would accomplish that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so she's not in the room right now, but we'll have in the minutes that we are referring to legal to ask her to craft language that any debit card or credit card would require authorization with established limits by the city council. Would that help?
That will be great. I think that will be a great step. I mean, then what we're dealing with, and I don't mean not to give you any information. I will be more than happy, but at this point, I won't be able to release.
Well, right,
Our
and that's sort of
information.
not our purview.
I was just gonna say the
I
same
mean,
thing. We don't have control
All
over
we
that at the end of the day.
can do is create something to hopefully prevent a problem in the
Yes.
future.
Happening again, yeah.
But we don't really have any jurisdiction anyway.
Yes.
Relative to what did or didn't happen.
Right.
That's on the admin side. Yeah.
Yep.
But anything else? So we're good with that referral? So
Yeah.
do we need I think I need a motion to,
Motion to request legal to put into a draft some language that gives the city council control to authorize the, not the
Use.
use, but the acquisition of a
The-
credit card
Yeah. I second that.
with
sorry.
limits, if we
and
can.
set
And
set limits.
set
Set
limits.
limits? And I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you for coming
Diaz
down,
Dado.
and thank you
Thank
for
you, Diaz
waiting.
Dado.
Okay, now, sir, in the audience, are you here on any of these? Okay. I'm very
Welcome to
happy that you're
Government
not, because you
101.
would have been waiting a long time. Okay, so, hang on, I pulled out an old agenda to read that order. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to leave on the table items 4 and 5 because
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And just for the public, those were street vendor license applications, one for Manuel Cotton to sell Latin food at 218 Elm, and one for Jeanette Vega to sell Spanish food at Hamden Street between Maple and Chestnut Street. So I'll accept a motion to take up item 6.
Motion to take up item number 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have an amended version of memorials and dedications, and originally, we were going to go ahead and move forward because Crystal thought that the whole banner issue was gonna be very complex and take a long time. But since then, some of us, I'm not sure if all of us, got a communication from Jesus in the Veterans Office with a sample of this awesome banner.
Oh, I seen it.
Yeah,
nice.
and they're working on some language. I said, can't we just keep it simple and get it done?
Yeah.
Instead of passing part and leaving that out?
Yeah.
So he is right now trying to coordinate with Holyoke Gas and Electric to see what poles could be used. So the hope is that maybe at the next meeting, we could roll the banner language in and have it on the main streets, on whatever properly designated places it could be.
It's commending, right? Commending our soldiers and
Yes.
people of.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think there's probably opportunities for like the Chamber of Commerce to put similar type banners up and down High Street. So I think
So anyway, at first it was thought we should just go ahead and get the original one done. But then on a second thought, it was like, well, if we wait maybe 2 more meetings and we could do that, it would be a nice image.
I agree.
So
for the
wait, I
city,
just have
too.
a question now that you're saying this way. So I know the banners that he's talking about, and I understand why it may appear to fall under memorials, dedications, and naming rights, but at the end of the day, what was Crystal thinking about banners? That she wanted to put banners in where did she want to put that?
I think she was putting it as a separate thing.
A separate thing under our sign ordinance even, or where would that go?
No, in this ordinance.
So limited to,
Limited to main streets, limited to veterans.
but this is about veterans and,
I think it is about veterans.
It is.
but that's his particular banner. So I don't know if we need to create a banner ordinance.
Well, no, she wanted to have a portion of this, like we did the signs for the Purple Heart Trail.
It's gonna come in.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
is she
gonna-
here?
yeah,
I thought
she's-
she left for her son's birthday.
Nope,
Oh, all
Her
right,
stuff is there.
all right. We'll let her say why. She did
Please.
explain it, but I forgot.
Please enjoy this music while we
The
wait.
details. You know, she did explain it, but, thanks for
Nice
coming
night.
down.
Thank you. Poor Joe was getting heated.
Well, but he had a legitimate.
They just submitted, it's just not. No, it's coming to you. I'm just a messenger.
But do we have copies of it?
It just came over from Sharon.
About the sign ordinance, but I think that
They continued their hearing.
it's not a recommendation. They actually, from what I understand, they continued, reopened, and closed.
Let's get through this.
No?
I think Joe's messing it. It's just,
Can we just do what we're doing?
That's what I was saying, like, I don't even wanna take that.
And then we'll go there.
Yeah.
And I know you're trying to get out of here, Crystal, and I'm sorry, it's just with the public hearing, it's hard to close it if people still want to weigh in.
We are at the memorials, dedications, naming rights, and related matters, and there was a sense that we could pass this tonight, except for the banners section or situation.
okay. So we were asked at the last, I don't know, can I talk, right?
Yeah, I think what I'm
Under
curious about
suspension
is,
of rules.
what I'm curious about is, so I understand that Jesus has these banners that are particular to veterans, and I'm just not sure what you were thinking, because it seems like, 1 out of every 10 banners may be something that's related to veterans or the military or something that we want to commemorate in that sense, government. And perhaps, if we're putting flags up and down, banners up and down High Street, the Chamber of Commerce or, other events may want to utilize something like that. So do banners need to be connected to this ordinance at all?
Yes, so it's actually, it's a nationwide program. It's called the Hometown Hero Banners. So the Veterans Services Department has figured that while we were doing Purple Heart Trail, that this would be a good commemoration of veterans and such to utilize different poles in the city. Jesus and myself, as well as Councilor Bartley and the person who actually manufactures the Purple Heart Trail signs, have all been in communication to try and figure out how to get these programs implemented so that people know, because the Purple Heart Trail's been there forever, but nobody really knows how to get a sign out there. And in that came about the Hometown Hero banners. So it's the same idea that you would apply with the Veterans Services Department. They have prepared a draft application for both Hometown Hero banner requirements and Purple Heart signs. And Purple Heart is actually, that all comes out of the, can't I find this?
But are these signs only on the Purple Heart Trail, and that's why they would fall under this ordinance, or?
So no, the Hometown Hero banners it's a nationwide idea, and basically it's, you know, the city would have to decide where these would be hung. They're usually only hung for a certain period of time. I believe we're looking at a year. And after the year, those signs are taken down and given to the people who have sponsored the banners to go up. And there's different qualifications on how to get yourself, not yourself, but how to request that somebody be on one of these banners. I know there's some work happening with which poles we would utilize, whether HG&E would allow us to utilize their poles, whether it needs to be city-owned poles, light poles, et cetera. So it was kind of questioned whether or not we should deal with that, or we should just pass the ordinance as is and we can add that in later. So I mean, there's different qualifications as to how you can either request a Purple Heart sign along the trail or a Hometown Hero banner, and all of that is kind of...
I see. So the whole idea of Purple Heart and Hometown Hero is not to put up like anonymous banners, but to say these are the people that have served.
Yes.
Correct.
I see. So they're individualized, and how you would then apply.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
So-
what you're saying.
They would
trying to
provide a
find-
picture of a veteran in uniform, and you have to provide like proof of their honorable service. There's a whole procedure. So, but
But that should be internal to the historical, the Veterans Affairs Commission. I don't
right.
think-
But if people start seeing these banners and they go, oh, that's really neat. How do I get one? We want something for
Right.
them to refer to. So
Right.
that's kind of how this
I
whole
saw
ordinance
it.
got
I saw it.
started.
I just didn't realize that they were personalized. I thought they were generic.
Well, this is,
Because what I hear it saying,
Jim
local
Hoare.
families could apply to have their family member recognized.
right.
Yeah, so I
So-
mean, maybe we have something that says Hometown Heroes, like this is what you do, and you go to
Right.
Veterans.
the
But it
Veterans
would-
Affair.
But it would fit in here nicely.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the problem in waiting a couple of weeks and just getting the language in and getting the answers and finishing it up at the next meeting.
We're just finding that it's taking more than a couple of weeks. There's so
All
many
right.
details to work out that it may be something that we just, because it's not a zone change, we don't need public hearings, et cetera.
Right.
This would be something that we could easily amend over time, and it's going to, I think, be amended over time.
Okay.
We're looking at the cost of what the banners would be if they need a donation submitted at the time they're requested.
Well, right.
Because these wouldn't belong to the city.
That would make sense.
You know, they're going back to the purchaser, so we want to make sure that
Have a
it's
sponsorship
commensurate
fee.
with, you know, what the cost actually is to the city to put them up, that we're not, you know, overcharging, undercharging, et cetera.
Right, and then there could be free will beyond a minimum.
Right.
Right.
Certainly donations, and the Purple
Yeah.
Heart Trail as well. We're trying to figure out, you know, what kind of, I believe I have in here $100 donation. We're talking about whether that's really necessary, whether it should be more or less, you know, how much the signs are going to be, what the cost is to Public Works to maintain them, et cetera. So
Do you want to hold off a little bit longer?
I think we can pass some of what's here. The Purple Heart Trail, maybe wait until we have the Hometown Heroes part. There was a question asked by the committee about the Historical Commission helping with the photographs and portraits throughout City Hall. I talked to the Historical Commission. They don't really have any capacity to handle that. They have no budget, no storage for these photos, et cetera.
That's in the
There's something called the
DPW
Friends
budget.
of City Hall, and I haven't had a chance to really figure out what that means.
Let's just
I mean,
table then.
maybe it's similar to
Yeah.
how libraries use Friends of. I don't.
I think.
Yeah, and I just think there's not really an urgency with this. I think we straightened out the one issue that occurred, and that got fixed. So if we table this for another month, I'd like to get all of it addressed in the best way that we can. And since there's already 2 other ones, if there's 3, how about if we table it to May?
Maybe the end of May?
Sure, or June even.
Okay.
Do you want us to table it to June?
Beginning of spring?
Yeah, when spring finally comes?
Maybe it'll snow.
Do you want to table it to the first meeting in June?
I think you're gonna get a
Just
more
to give
comprehensive
time.
draft the
All right,
more amount of time. We're gonna have some meetings between now and then to figure out the best way
Right.
to get everybody involved, but I think this is a great idea.
Okay, motion to table.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
The other 2 orders have to do with marijuana, and the makers are not here, so I would motion that we
Right.
table those as well.
But if we could just take them up briefly?
As a package?
Sure.
Sure. Motion to take up items number, in my agenda, it's 7 and 8. I don't know if that's
Second.
correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
So item 7, filed by Council Roman, was to tax cultivators of marijuana, and rates are listed. And the other order, 8, filed by Councilor Leahy, was to create an ordinance on recreational regarding taxation of products that will be manufactured and/or sold. And Crystal, I put this on the agenda because I saw that license applications are being accepted as of now. And so it seemed timely, and we also have in the jacket a special permit request for a manufacturer and retail of medical and recreational. And I asked Ryan to reach out to you in terms of proper notice, and I did discuss with Marcos and Jeff. And, you know, we have to get the letters from all the various departments relative to the permit, and then we have to do the well, they have to actually do the advertising. But I just wanted to make sure it's a new ordinance, so we were following everything properly relative to that. But anyway, because of that, and because we already have the medical one going that we expect will come in probably for recreational also, it seemed like we should address the tax issue because it must be timely. Or am I jumping the gun?
Well, so there was a bulletin released by the Division of Local Services, the Mass Department of Revenue, dated April 2018, discussing acceptance of a local excise or amendment of an excise rate that has to occur in order for the collection of excise tax to happen, and they've given some suggested language of how to go about accepting a local excise rate regarding retail marijuana facilities.
So would it be proper for me to entertain a motion to refer it to you to give us back that language once it's provided so that we can get it to the council?
I think it pertains to, so Councilor Leahy's ordered that the city creates an ordinance on recreational marijuana regarding taxation of products to be manufactured or sold. Without digging in too much, I think we could come under that. And I think
Okay,
there's some
whatever
proposed
works.
language. And maybe see if that was their intent of those orders.
Well, I know, my recollection was at the time, it was if we were gonna have this business, then they wanted to collect the most taxes we could from it. Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. And Crystal, where were you saying or referencing these thoughts from? Who was making these recommendations?
Division of Local Services of the Mass Department of Revenue. It's a bulletin, and I believe if you search bulletin, it's labeled BUL-2018-3.
And I think we all got a booklet on our desk maybe 3 or 4 months back that had some recommendations for how to draft different parts of local ordinances. I could poke around in there to see.
They give us the procedure, the acceptance or amendment procedure, as well as some draft language of how to draft an order and get it approved. It's just, I'm not sure from the wording here, without asking the makers, if this is what their intention was, or if they're looking at other taxes based on, host agreements, et cetera, so.
I think they're talking about the products,
They are.
like the whatever consumables and.
Counselor McGivern?
Quick question. Crystal, if something is manufactured in Hoyoke but sold in another community, can the city where it's manufactured place a tax on it?
I'm not positive.
That'd be interesting.
We have to collect our taxes on whatever transactions are happening locally.
Correct. But if the manufacturer is selling it to someone else to sell it,
I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
the point of sale. Not the actual consumer, but
No.
the wholesaler.
Wholesale.
wholesale.
He's a wholesaler.
Distribution.
Oh, good question.
So, can you work with that, Crystal, if we sort of hand it over to you and then you let us know when it's ready to come back?
I mean, I could have it, I can get you this language for the next meeting, I just don't know if that's what they're doing here. Probably not, but without them here, I don't know.
The way he says manufacturing and sold, that's why it kind of hit me the way he wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote it broadly, so it could cover everything.
Yeah, I think this is more of the marijuana retailers that are subject to state excise. This is more of retail sales, so I'm not sure what he's looking for as far as manufacturers. I can reach out to the
All
counselors.
right, and if we need different language, we can file it in a different way.
Okay.
All right. So a motion to refer to legal and we'll get feedback.
Motion to refer to legal to get some draft language to consider.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Were you all set?
Oh, yes, I have this. Okay, so Crystal, this letter. I didn't even read it. Oh, I didn't read it yet either. Should I read this into the record? Is it an official letter?
I would
Not a
just read the first
recommendation, I think.
paragraph. It's not a recommendation. I believe they're just trying to give you guys some communication.
Did they close their hearing? Well,
I don't believe so. They continued it, but
Just realized we have some constitutional issues with signs.
we do?
Keep reading. No. Constitutional. It's in the letter.
So it's not even clear, it doesn't even say that they opened the hearing and continued it to a date certain.
I think that's their recommendation, and we can now go forward.
But
They
that's
just gave
just
us a recommendation.
I think that's communication, just so you know that they're providing you with what their thoughts are at this point in time. I can't speak for them, though. I'm just the messenger.
My definition is a recommendation. We now have a recommendation from the planning board. Let's go forward. Crystal's gonna hate me by the time tonight's over.
Oh, sorry. I think, so, we're not, take up item number 1. Is it 1 or 2? I'm sorry.
It was item 2.
So just,
Which we tabled.
so motion to take up item number 2 since we are
Off the
talking about it,
table.
yeah.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So item 2 is off the table on the zone change to be in conform with sign ordinance.
So the way that I'm reading this is that they want us to consider visibility, which we did consider because we talked about the way a 40-foot,
Ad nauseum.
40 square foot, 75 foot, 150 square foot
Yes.
would impact
We did.
line of sight and existing businesses.
We did.
They want us to talk about messaging, And if we want to put additional controls on the messaging,
Which we don't.
well, we may want to, because then anybody could take out a sign and say,
It's a directional sign. I mean, for a purpose. It's a special permit sign with a purpose.
but it just says off-premise signs, and we're not controlling the message.
No,
You're-
but we can in the special permit.
Okay, and so then we would be addressing the messaging.
Right.
We're not gonna let people say F this and F that, yeah.
The message.
Only on Facebook, apparently.
I think Counselor McGivern brought up the issue of density, which is what they're saying here.
Yeah.
So limit the number of off-premises signs maybe on a particular parcel. And they refer the committee to the previous recommendation. So I do interpret this as a recommendation, that they are saying, we've given you our recommendation, we've outlined all the things that we want to see in it. Please consider these additional things as you craft the draft that we're going to create here. And I think that the recommendations that we gave you addressed most of these things except for density. I don't think density, while we raised it as an issue.
Hang on
Councilman
a
McGivern
second.
Raised it as an issue, we didn't address it very deeply.
Hang on a second. I think it said in the draft, which we didn't delete that part. No property shall have more than one off-premises sign without exception. Now, that was in the new draft. That's not our original. But that would accomplish the density concern if you can only have one.
It does, it does say, I'm sorry, Crystal.
We're all on the same page, let's go. Put it up.
Crystal,
I'm good.
Crystal was right and says that these issues must be addressed and the draft revised before the board can responsibly issue any recommendation to its adoption. So,
Wait a minute.
But they're not adopting it.
The planning board wants to give us their recommendation to help us with the final product after we give them the final product.
That's backwards.
Yes.
They're an advisory board to us, and then we make the final product.
yeah, I agree. The way that this is worded is asking us to address these changes, and they're gonna weigh in and evaluate our changes.
Yeah, but that's not,
So here comes
The way
that
it goes.
keep reviewing open for eternity.
I
Yeah.
know,
Well, and you know,
This is why they need to be here.
but they cannot be required to be here. They're a separate board.
so, since this is the original signed copy, I think I should give it back to,
That was brought over from the planning board to give to you.
so it stays in the jacket.
We'll put it in the jacket.
Lock it up.
Hot potato.
Oh, out in the hallway, I saw it.
I want a copy of that somehow.
Oh, do we have an ability to get a copy?
Yeah, I want a copy of that.
Just call the planning board tomorrow and ask
Just
them for a
ask them for
copy.
one.
Or I can leave it in the jacket and ask Ryan to
Make a-
send it to us PDF.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I gotta bring stickies with me when I come here. I'm gonna write a note on the top of it. I can write on it,
Yeah.
it's not gonna. Ryan, please send to,
Motion to receive the communication
is there a second?
Second.
and
On
ask
favor?
Ryan
Aye.
to PDF it to the committee members.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna say, please send to all committee members and Joe. Well, you actually were a committee member tonight.
Sorry, Crystal.
Good.
Joe, you're not that easy.
Is he better now? Because usually tonsils